How's it going today, guys? Back on the channel today. We're going to do a little bit of a fall transition breakdown. It's a question that I've been getting asked a lot lately around town, and also a question that I want to answer for a lot of y'all. Like, what is even the fall transition? Basically, what the fall transition is, and this is to my knowledge because I'm still learning things, just like every other day. We always are learning something. You know, it's when fish are moving from, you know, their summer habits and their summer homes to their winter. It's basically where they're going from their summer patterns to their winter patterns, and that fall transition is where they start to make that move to the winter pattern, to the fall pattern. Sometimes they group up in certain places, and sometimes maybe it's not even that, or it's just they start chasing bait more, or to start acting more a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, active. Simple word. They're acting more active. So with that being said, you know, I got a couple baits that we're going to start out by saying which baits I like to use in the fall transition. Starting off, I got several different baits. A lot of these are you can see are basically more about shad, fishing the shad spawns, or just shad in general. And then some of these, you could tell, are bottom baits like speed worms and some plasma tails. And then also these swim baits. And then we got some Cincos over here. Now, let's get something straight. I'm not going to say that you can't fish 25 feet deep during the fall transition. I'm not going to say you can't fish in a foot of water during this fall transition. The great thing about fall transition is they're everywhere. Fish are everywhere. That's what the fall transition is all about, is that the fish are everywhere. This is a great time in Florida, and it's different in other sides of the country, but in Florida, that October, November, and I would even say early December months is a great time where if you want to go catch a fish doing a certain thing, this is a great time of year to do it, because fish are kind of everywhere. And they're kind of doing a couple different things. But those days where you can absolutely kill them is when you make the right corrections to fish the way that they are wanting it. So today we're going to break that down into that. So starting off, probably these, I'm not going to say these are my favorites. Well, they are my favorites, but I'm not going to say which one's the favorite, because it's really, I don't really have a favorite bait. What's my favorite bait is the one that's catching the fish. So these are just a bunch of good baits that I use during the shad spawn. Okay, so I'm going to start out with a rattle trap, lipless crankbait, whatever you want to call it. This is a Spro, a Ruku shad. This is the 85. I tend to throw a little bit bigger one. I don't have my rods out here. We were actually doing this in the shed because we couldn't make it to the lake today because of it's been raining like crazy out here in Florida. So basically, this is just a lipless crankbait. Where I would fish this at is, you know, anywhere from a foot of water to 30 feet of water. You know, that's pretty much the deepest water we're going to come across in Florida. And I mainly fish it around grass, you know, hydrilla, eelgrass, peppergrass, milfoil. If I can find offshore grass, this is definitely going to be a giant key. Coming into the fall transition side of things with this bait. That looks like a shad. Basic as that. It's and fish during the fall transition are grouping up on bait fish, and 9 times out of 10 that bait fish is shad. So this is a great one. Snapping it in and out of grass. Just fishing deep water, fishing schoolers. You know, if you see fish busting, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you see fish busting on top, they won't commit to a top water. This is always a good follow-up. You can fish it fast, you can get it into you quick, and with the 85 size, I found out that the hooks are a little bit bigger. It's a little bit easier to hold them on, get the fish to hold on to it. You know, sometimes with the 1/4 ounce ones, you lose a lot of fish. So that's that one. Okay, and another one that's kind of the same principle as this one, but a little bit more weedless, I would say, is the chatterbait. This is just a normal 1/2 ounce original Z-Man chatterbait. There's the jackhammer and everything, and I use those too. But this is just a normal 1/2 ounce chatterbait. I got in, I think this is their pearl shad or something like that, skirt color. Silver blade. I typically fish this in the same scenarios that I would fish the lipless crankbait. Fishing in pretty much the same way, you know, ripping it in and out of the grass. This is probably not going to be my first thing I would grab to throw at a school, but when it comes to deep grass, shallow grass, moving water, or if they're, you know, docks, skipping under docks, this is probably going to be it. And this bait lasts, well, if you get on a good chatterbait bite during the fall, you can pretty much catch them on chatterbait all day. I mean, you can do the same thing with the lipless crankbait, but this chatterbait keeps the fish coming back. I don't fish it just with the chatterbait. I would take a swim bait and put it on the back of it, you know. Some Kitex, come down halfway, or if you throw the 3.5 inch, throw it on the back of this sucker. You got a little boot tail swim bait. Let it sink down until you feel the grass, snap it out, and just reel it through the top of the grass. Okay, now we done two. Both of those, real quick, both of those, give it a little setup. I don't have my rods out here, but we're just gonna go. And this bait right here is a 1/2 ounce. Fishing both of these in grass. A lot of people think, oh, I just need a 7-foot medium rod to throw a rattle trap. No, if you're throwing an 85 and you're throwing in the stuff that I'm throwing in, and you know, we're fishing 10-12 foot of water with, you know, 6-foot hydrilla, I'm throwing this on a 7.5 foot extra heavy. Most people's flipping sticks, throwing it on 20-pound fluorocarbon, and my whole goal is to rip it out of the grass. And if you go out and start ripping grass with a 7-foot medium heavy action rod, and that fish hits after you rip it out of the grass, you're going to see why I use a heavier setup, because you don't want to get owned. Same thing with this way. The same rod, well, not the same rod, but the same setup that I use for this one is the same setup I use for these. I'll typically, if I'm catching fish on this one's going to be on the deck too. So moving along, another one. This is a really good one for schooling fish, which, like all of us know, fish tend to school really good in the fall. Especially, I know I've seen a lot of my buddies posting pictures and stuff from this past weekend, and even I got into them a little bit of schooling fish popping up on top, or they're just staying suspended. A great bait to catch them on is a hair jig. This is a Cumberland Pro Prayer hair jig. This is, I believe, a 1/2 ounce. We're in Florida. We don't have too very deep of water, and I tend to do better on these hair jigs when I use a little bit lighter weight. I think it's because with the feathers, kind of slows it down a little bit, and I could stroke it a little bit better. It gets the bites better. Same thing, shad color. If I see them schooling on top, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be one of the ones that I'm going to use. A lot of people would replace this in their arsenal as a fluke, and I still use flukes too. I just tend, this one catches really good fish, and I can fish this one a tad bit faster. And if I got fish suspended in 12 foot of water, this one's going to get down there like this. And if I'm fishing 5 foot of water and they're schooling, I can still get this thing in there and work it pretty quick and get it in and out, make another cast. And that's the whole goal about schooling fish. It's not just to get bit, but it's to be as efficient as you possibly can, because if there's a school of 30 fish, you don't want to just catch one. You want to catch as many as possible. So, you know, in and out with this. Moving along from there, going back to the grass side of things, or shell, hard bottom, fish in transition periods. You know, we got that in Florida. We have canals in some of our lakes. That's a transition period. You know, that when they're dug out, you know how they dig out, and they typically take the waste, or it's not waste, the bottom of where they clear out the lake, they take and they drop it in front of the canals, and usually makes good shell beds and stuff. Or if we're talking about main lakes with points in them, you know, fishing off the points, you know, sometimes we might have a lake that's 25 feet deep in the middle, but it has a point that staggers out forever, and you might be 200 yards off the bank and still only be in 5 foot of water. And sometimes not only will they just hold fish, but sometimes they school there. Sometimes they chase bait real good there. A really good bait in that kind of scenario is a DT10, Rapala DT10. This happens to be another shad color bait. If you haven't really figured it out yet, these are mainly shad color baits and presentations that I'm showing you, because that's the #1 thing that these fish are doing. You know, it ain't summer anymore. The brim and the bluegill are not spawning anymore. You know, it's the time of year where the fish's #1 goal is to fatten up for the winter so he can spawn, or he can go make babies, and to get to their spawning grounds. So they're trying to group up on bait and eat. Another quick moving one is going to be a Rapala DT10. I fish this in grass where I fish the lipless crankbait. I'll fish it in on hard bottoms, and I'll fish it pretty much anywhere. If it's now, the only time I won't throw this is if I'm throwing a little bit deeper, and I'll go to a DT16 or something, or a 6XD. Okay, going on from there, we got top water. This is a Ama Japan little stick. I think this is a 115. I don't see on it. On this one, I'm going to, this is a top water bait, so this is good for schooling fish as well. Same spot I would throw this. This is typically when you pull up to a school, you're most likely going to throw top water. You're going to try to catch them on top water first, and if you can't catch them on top water, that's when you're going to go elsewhere, like the lipless crankbait or the hair jig or the fluke. The only reason that you can throw any kind of top water in a school. I feel like, I've caught them on torpedoes, I've caught them on poppers, but I think a walking bait is pretty much the best one. And that goes back to the whole theory about moving. Moving. I mean, like I said, you're not just trying to catch one fish, but if you can get in and out of there real quick, and if that school is going haywire on top of the water and there's 30 fish busting, you want something that's going to get efficient. You can get it going and get in there. And this is a really fun bait to throw. I'm really impressed. This is probably hands down the best topwater walking bait that I've ever thrown. And this is a brand new one. Tomorrow I'm hoping to give it a few scratches and stuff from catching some fish on it. So that's a good one. Topwater. Topwater fall transition around points, docks, just grass, banks, hydrilla beds, deep water, schools. Another good fall transition bait is a topwater bait, a topwater walking bait. Okay, so now not only does fish tend to suspend in the winter time, it's not only just the summertime where they're trying to seek cool water. It is sometimes in the winter time too. Some of my best days offshore, I found fishing 20 foot of water that is just a 10-15 fish pod squeezed in together. And when that happens, I'm looking at getting down there to the bottom and being effective. It ain't summertime. They're not really lethargic because it's really hot, and it's not the deep winter where we just had a cold front come through where they don't want to eat. It's that fall transition period where they're still looking for food. They're out looking. That's what they want to do. A fish is not sitting this time of year. So that's why these baits are pretty much all moving baits. I do got some slow moving ones, but we still have baits that in presentations that we're moving. So here we are as a Strike King 6XD. I got this one out here, but let me explain this to you guys. This is not the only one I'm going to throw. I'm also going to throw a 10XD, a 3XD, a 5XD, whatever the situation may be. I just have this out here to represent a deep diving crankbait. If I'm on a 12-foot shell bed and I see them potted up on the bottom, I'm going to break out a 5XD or dredge it with a 6. And if I see them in 20 foot of water, I'm going to throw the 10XD. Shad color baits, once again, ghost shad. If you go to a Rapala bait or Yozuri bait, you're looking at the prism shad. You have all kinds of different bait colors, but I'm going to typically stay with the shad patterns. This what this time of year is for us, to me, is shad patterns. I'm not going to really get into the bluegills and stuff like that. It's going to be mainly shad colors. Okay. Now on this one, I don't have the swim bait head out. It's in the bottom of the boat, and I'm not even going to grab it. I'm just going to explain. Another one is a boot tail swim bait. This one has to be, I think it's a Fat Impact Kitech. They ranges in size. Sometimes I throw the 3.5 on 8-pound fluorocarbon on an open reel, or sometimes I throw the 7-inch on a 1-ounce head on a bait caster on a big stick. Typically it's the same situation. Wherever you're catching these fish on, you could catch them on this. But just like the chatterbait and just like this, it's not just always a morning bite. You can catch them all day on this. If you got fish that are you got decent water visibility, and you got fish, suspended in 8 foot of water and it's 14 feet deep, this is a really good style of bait to catch them on. You can get down there efficiently and work it pretty good. Size rod I'm going to throw this on, I'm going to typically throw, it depends on like I said, the size of the swim bait. Sometimes I'm throwing them on open reels, sometimes I'm throwing them on bigger bait casters. but typically on a 4.3 inch, I'm going to throw a 3/8 ounce head, and I'm probably going to throw it on a 7.3 rod, and I'm probably going to go with 15-pound fluorocarbon. That's pretty typical for me. I use a 6 cents head. Got great hooks on them, and they really stick to fish. Really good looking too. So that's that one. Another one that's kind of on the it's on the slower side of things. I got all these fast moving baits out here, and you're probably wondering what the heck has he got plasma tails out. This is for drop shotting and shaky heading. So going back to what we were doing on this 6XD, we are on the 6XD. We were talking about potted fish on the bottom, you know, in deep water. It's the same thing. You know, if I approach a school, this is probably going to be the first bait I'm going to throw in here is a 6XD. But let's say I can't get him to bite the 6XD, or if I get bit once or twice, and I can tell by how that crankbait's in his mouth that he's not really feeling it, but he's eating it, I'm probably going to go to the plasma tail, a finesse worm of some sort, and I'm going to throw it on a drop shot or a lighter shaky head. I usually go with black and blue. That's a typical good color. If you live in Florida, that's a really good color for down here. So not much to it. This is going to be involve a lot of video game fishing off the front of the boat. You know, going vertical fishing on top of them, looking them on the graph and dropping them down in the pods. Or if I know they're pretty much typical, they're, you know, the pod is about 60 yards in front of the boat, I'm just going to flick this out there and try to get one on that with a shaky head or drop shot. Now back to the shallow water side of things, because we do fish shallow around here. Not a lot of people believe it, but we do. Is a speed worm. This is the one bait I would probably say that you can catch fish on all year long, but definitely in the fall. This thing is, I mean, it's retarded in the fall. There's only one way I fish it, and I think everybody fishes it the same way, but it's a Texas rig, and I usually sometimes that might be on thicker braid, sometimes that might be on fluorocarbon. Typically it's fluorocarbon though. Usually 1/4 ounce tungsten Uncle Waite's tungsten head, or weight pegged with a bobber stop to a 5/0 hook, and that's pretty much simple as it gets. I mean, and we're fishing it either bouncing it or fishing it, reeling it slow on the bottom. If it's grass, if it's shell, if it's around docks, if it's anywhere, if it's at a boat ramp, this is how we throw it. Now speed worms are #1 baits. I mean, if you ain't getting bit on any of these, that was speed worm, you'll get bit. So going back, we're talking about thick cover, mat fishing, lily pads, Kissimmee grass, cattails, whatever you guys like to fish. A Cinco. It's probably the most #1 bait in the bass fishing industry, I would say. Everybody owns a Cinco, especially in Florida. I got a range of different colors here. These are typical. I'm not a big guy of change. I pretty much throw the same colors everywhere I go. As a tournament fisherman, you know, we usually stick to what we catch fish with. We don't like to experiment too many different baits. I do got a bunch of neat baits that I try out, and I'm not saying I don't have a bunch of nonsense in my boat, but when it comes to Cincos in general, I stick to a couple main colors. So this one right here is, you know, we call it Toho, which is your green pumpkin with blue flash. You know, you got green pumpkin. This one right here is I think that's a 6-inch. I would typically throw this in you could throw this on a magnet head, JT magnet head, or you could flip it in a mat, flip it around pads, flip it around grass docks. But typically these are the colors. I'm not going to really give you a color that works, because honestly, all of them work. It's all about your situation that you're in. I will give you this, that I do like this baby bass color, because it's kind of got a little bit of shad in it, and I'll usually throw this. Another good one is just like I fish a fluke. Other than fishing a fluke on top water in a school, I'll fish that weightless. So another good way to catch them. It's not the fastest retrieve, it's not the fastest in and out, and you miss a lot. You miss fish on it too, because you got to hook set them. On these, as you can tell, they all got pretty good hooks, and they all got treble hooks. You know, you're gonna get them. But typically, that's just it. You know, stick baits, Cincos, whatever you want to call them, fishing them around pretty much any cover. But that action of the quiver of a Cinco just catches them. And in any colors, like I said, your situation might be different. I will say that a lot of mine are, I catch a lot of fish on the black and blue one, because black and blue works good in Florida. It's pretty much one of my go-tos. wrapping it up, like I said, the number ones, the thing about fall transition is the baits. We have a bunch of baits here, but I see people on YouTube catching them on a lot of things. I've caught my fair share of fish on umbrella rigs, A-rigs, whatever you want to call them, big swim baits, glide baits. There's all different kinds of ways to catch them. The baits isn't all that it really is in the fall transition. A lot of it's positioning and just knowing what's going on. And if I can explain it to you guys, the best of my knowledge is just understand that fish are everywhere. And just because you're on a 15 to 20 fish school or fish count that you're catching in this hydrilla bed doesn't mean they're not going to be on this dock over here by this man's house. They're going to be in both spots. You can pick a 20, you can catch 10 fish here, go there and catch 10 fish, go over there and catch 10 fish, or you can catch 2 fish here, 2 fish there, whatever. They're everywhere. It's just knowing about how to target them. And if you understand what they're doing, which is they're trying to eat bait, they're trying to group up and they're trying to eat, and they're trying to get big and get ready for this fall, the transition to the beds and moving shallow and getting up there and spawning, then you guys might have a better chance of catching these fish this time of year. It's a very sometimes you probably know this as well as you go on your social media. You'll see guys that are catching them real good one weekend, and then that guy the next week doesn't catch anything. Well, it's probably because he was on them and then he got off of them, but it's probably because something as simple as they changed. I mean, like I said, fish are changing every day. You could go out today and catch them a certain way, but tomorrow they might be in a different way, and that's the great thing. Well, the sucky thing about fall transition is they're changing. But for one day they might be yours, and the next day they might be somebody else's because he's going to do whatever you didn't do. So the best thing to do is just do everything, and then you'll figure them out. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And we're going to try to get some good footage of me using all these baits and catching fish. But real quick, we just wanted to kind of do a little segment on the baits.